Did anything that happened among it all surprise you?
Not really. I mean, I think when we knew that the committee was going to come back, it was fairly inevitable that it was going to be pretty extraordinary. I think the report came back. This 90-day suspension was perhaps the only thing that sort of surprised me, because I think actually there was a sense really amongst some of Boris's supporters that it sort of proved that it was a kind of kangaroo court because it had kind of overreached a bit. And I think that was the one thing where I kind of thought, I think if the committee had just stuck with its original report with the potential for a 20-day suspension, everybody would have kind of gone, oh, OK, fair enough, and been less kind of excited about it. But the fact that that happened, I think, meant that you saw some of Boris's supporters start coming to his rescue, although I think I'm now counting 7 people that have come out publicly.
As many as 7.
As
Wow.
many as 7 come out publicly and support him.
Presumably what the committee wanted to do was really deliver a kick to the extent to which Boris Johnson had tried to undermine the committee. Basically saying people must not do this in future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think there is some concern about how that's going to play out on Monday. With the kind of essence that it's a one-line whip. The Chief Whip has decided that he's not going to force people to come into Parliament in order to vote for this committee's report. And, of course, we're now expecting that potentially it will go through without a vote, because if nobody objects to it, then it will just go through on the nod, which will stop that kind of dangerous division where effectively Boris's colleagues are going to have to pick sides.
Yeah, sure. Well, look, also on Boris Johnson, inevitably, it's not my fault. The Times today says that Boris Johnson's 25 notebooks from his time in office are being withheld from him by the government after review by the security services found that pages of highly sensitive material which should only be viewed by people with the highest level of security clearance were among them, and also raised some concerns about Johnson's WhatsApp messages. This is a sort of long-running story, but this isn't just sort of froth and nonsense about Boris Johnson. This is a proper story, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is, concern about if you have papers and you're a former Prime Minister and you obviously write things down as you go along. I mean, I'm quite surprised that Boris wasn't so chaotic that his paperwork wasn't everywhere. I mean, it seems quite surprising to me that
bunch of receipts in a shoebox.
Exactly, that he had a kind of system for filing his thoughts in his notebooks. But, clearly, if you're going into meetings and if you think about the time that he was leading the country through the pandemic, it's fairly inevitable that there would have been things that perhaps were discussed and that he wrote down that might be of some kind of national security element to it. However, Boris, as ever, is saying that's not the case. He doesn't really understand why there's all this hoo-ha around it. It's quite difficult to always know what's really going on, because there's also a battle going on the other side, which is that the current Prime Minister doesn't want to release his documents and papers either. So anything which suggests that there might be some reason why that's a reasonable thing to do is something that the government are going to be quite keen for us to know about, I think.
So this is basically a precedent battle, really, it makes a lot of noise because it's about Boris Johnson, but actually this is the government trying to establish the circumstances in which they should and should not have to hand stuff over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, there's all sorts of questions about what might be included in the material that Rishi Sunak doesn't want to have declared, but also just generally, should we establish a precedent where effectively a public inquiry, a committee can look at very, very personal documents. We're not talking about government documents here. We're not talking about things that were circulated at the cabinet table. We're talking about personal messages, WhatsApps, even notebooks, scribbles, as Boris Johnson calls it, and whether those should be put in the public domain. Because at the end of the day, people will argue that there are things that they should be able to privately reflect on that shouldn't end up in the public domain.
Sure. Okay, moving on. Nadine Dorries, resigned or not resigned?
My understanding is not resigned, but there's been so many different kind of moments in this particular story. It's quite hard to keep track of. We had the whole kind of, I'm not resigning yet because I'm doing all these subject access requests. Yeah. Then it emerged that actually she can't do these subject access requests because the honours system doesn't respect or doesn't observe those particular rules. So I'm not quite sure where we are in the whole saga.
Do you think she definitely will resign?
Well, it's a really interesting question, isn't it? I mean, you would have thought, given that she sort of went in a sort of fit of pique, that she would. There are some people that think that she's hanging on, that she's going to be kind of like a sword of Damocles over Sunak's head until he puts her on his honours list. So it could be a long-running saga there. But I mean, equally, is she just holding on so that she can speak in Monday's debate? That's the other question that people are asking themselves. There aren't necessarily going to be that many people that are going to go to the debate anyway, who are Johnson supporters, particularly after he said that he doesn't expect them to either vote in his favour or indeed turn up. But maybe she'll be the one cheerleader that wants to go into the chamber and make the case for Boris.
Do you think the debate is going to be sort of absent of drama, basically, because the Johnson crew, which is quite small, aren't going to turn up?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, having spoken to my sources, I mean, you can already see the motion on the order paper. It's there in black and white. It's a one-line motion, which basically says that we approve the committee's report. I think Penny Mordaunt, the leader of the House of Commons, will launch that motion. I suspect she'll do it in very neutral terms. And then we'll see a response from Labour's Shadow Commons leader, Thangam Debonair. And I think, again, from having spoken to my sources, there's a kind of sense that they don't need to add any drama to it, that the report speaks for itself, it's fairly excoriating, and that they want to show respect to that committee's report. They don't want to, anyway, sort of bring any new drama to it, because it's all there. It's absolutely all. I mean, I think what they will do if hundreds and hundreds of Conservative MPs don't turn up and the chamber's empty on one side, they may well call them out for it and suggest that is not respectful of a parliamentary institution, which at the end of the day is cross-party and indeed has a Conservative majority.
But so, I mean, in terms of actual rebellions, actual sort of votes against, we're talking single figures probably.
I would have thought so. And that, again, is if we even get to a vote. And my strong sense is that won't happen.
Right, understood. In sort of final Boris Johnson question, reports earlier this week, rumours rather, that he might be thinking of running again as London Mayor. Anything in that?
Oh gosh, we've gone back to that one, have we?
Yep.
Well, there's always rumours about Boris coming back. I mean, he is the source of most of the rumours. His team certainly. I think the story behind this is that Boris doesn't want to be thought of as an irrelevance.
Yeah.
He's very keen to be still considered as somebody that has influence, power, can come back. I mean, the truth of the matter is, why would you bother? He's just got, which some people think is a significant sum of money for his new Daily Mail column.
About slimming drugs.
Yes,
very odd.
Very odd.
Been sitting on that one a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And he's going to go around the world making money. His salary as an MP was a drop in the ocean. I mean, I think somebody described it to me as, if you look at his registered members, it is literally about 2 hours worth of work for his 80,000 plus salary that he'd get as an MP. It's a lot of work. And I just can't see why he'd want to do it at this sort of particular stage. If you're not going to come back as Prime Minister, his great hope to be the kind of Winston Churchill of his generation, I can't see why you'd bother.